Oh, thanks.
Too distant.
Yeah. Thank you. Are we ready?
We are recording. Welcome to our meeting tonight. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
Flag
of the United States
of America,
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
still on. Next, we will have our public input statement from the Vice Chair.
The first, the first public input session is a 21-minute session with each person having no longer than 3 minutes in which to make a statement. But a second public input session may be held at the end of the meeting if allowed by the board chair. Each speaker will give his or her name, address, and reason for speaking. Public input is designated for district residents, but the board chair may grant non-residents the opportunity to address the board as well. Statements concerning subject matter that falls under the law regarding executive sessions, for example, matters involving personnel, cannot be made during public input. We as a community pledge to treat each other as we wish to be treated. We pledge to seek understanding when there may be disagreement. Regardless of outcomes or opinions, we pledge to move forward with respect. This is a time for comments or questions for the board, but please be aware that questions may not be able to be answered at this meeting.
Do we have anyone for public input tonight? Okay, moving on to number 3, the minutes of January 16th.
A really long time ago.
Anyone have any corrections, additions,
You had an extra,
anything?
but otherwise I thought they were,
Okay, I got it. Where is it? It's fine.
Where?
the attendance. I was present remotely.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second. We have a second.
I'll second.
Hey, all those in favor? And I'm abstaining because I wasn't here. All right, our financial summary for January.
You should all have a financial summary here. So we are approximately 42% remaining in our year, so we're over halfway. If you look, we are right on track with state subsidy and local revenue. I am going to speak to other revenue in just a moment, and we are looking pretty good on all the other categories. We have more of the year to come, obviously. We have lots of snow going on. One of the things about expenses I wanted to touch base on was utilities, electric, heating oil, those things. And the electric has moderated. And in all of our utilities, we have approximately 40 to 42% remaining of all of the budgets, oil, propane, and even electricity. So that has moderated. I haven't had time to dig super deep into the usage and the kilowatt hours, but I would like to say it has a lot to do with some of our efficiency work that we did with our HVAC and other things. So anyway, that's looking better. And athletic transportation, surprisingly, is looking better. The fall season was where we used a lot of coach buses and things. You remember it was just creeping higher. We have now leveled off and we have about half of our transportation budget remaining. So we went from super overuse to the winter sports, which have moderated our use. So we are hopeful for a good result there.
Do you anticipate that the spring sports might require?
Yes, spring sports are going to be a little more difficult. Our transportation director, though, has hired a number of people to be athletics transportation drivers. So they are people who want to work a couple days a week, and they really only want to take teams to or from their locations. So we are hopeful that will moderate again some of our private coach use.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to talk about revenue and specifically our rebates. Audra has a sheet that she's going to pass around.
Thank you.
I think the last time we met, we had talked about the fact that we had in the budget $100,000 for main care revenue. But as we had, pursued that and really unraveled it, it was not going to be worthwhile. There was too much effort on the part of many staff members and not enough revenue that was going to come in. So we have decided to put that on the back burner for now. If you, in general, if you look at this, you'll see the enacted budget in the first column, the year-to-date revenue that we have actually received in our bank account. We have the revenue that I'm estimating to be collected, and then where that puts us estimated for the end of the year. You can see that our high cost out of district placements. So those are the kids that go out to an out of district school for special education, and they have high costs. We have 2 students, for example, right now that attend the Birch Tree Center. The approximate cost per year is somewhere in the $140,000 to $150,000 a year range. And what the state does in the spring is they say, well, if you have some of these really expensive kids that go out of district, we're going to make you assume responsibility for a certain amount of money. Last year, it was about $40,000. And then the other amounts, we're going to send you to offset that extreme expense. So when we made the budget for fiscal 25, I believe we thought we were going to have 3 or 4 of these students higher cost, and we only have 2. So that's a good thing that way, but it will cause a reduction in that revenue line.
I have a question.
Denise, hold
The
on.
other line
Denise?
we wanted to talk about
Denise?
was, oh yeah, please.
Sorry, I just have a question. Because I feel like the people in this, like you are the most suited to speak about this. Do we have any type of like correspondence with our representatives at the State House to tell them like how inefficient that particular program is for our school? Like, have we reached out, or do we go testify at the State House?
About the high,
Main care.
Yeah,
The main care.
about the main care issue, or like even sending a letter to like our representatives saying
Past-
it's so cumbersome.
yes,
Yeah.
in the past, we've done so.
Okay.
Anyone? So we're going to move to the line for Mary Hart Academy student tuition. So when we budgeted a year ago, we had estimated 7 students from other districts coming in. And I think we received fewer than that for various reasons. And we are now down to 1 student this year. We have 2 students that were here for approximately half a year, and another that was scheduled to come that ended up not coming. I don't know if you want to speak to that anymore, or, it's something we look at, but it's.
So just the reality, thanks. The reality of this is that it's human, right? So the kids are sometimes the best laid plans and the goals are that you are able to fill all those slots, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way in terms of the district kiddos coming in. So we're going to continue to, and Melissa and Josie are still, reaching out and offering up services to other districts. And we actually had a couple of visitations this past week. We'll see how those plays out. But we're going to continue to to offer the services to other districts. But there are also, the districts are also figuring out that perhaps they can be building their own programs in-house as well to try to offset some of the costs for high placements. We are not an exceedingly expensive program for people. But as we all know, everybody's trying to do the best that they can with the finances that are in front of them. So yeah, I think that's probably the easiest way to say it.
All right. Let's go to a line that's a little more in our favor, bank interest. So we budgeted 120,000 for bank interest. We're collecting somewhere between $16,000 and $20,000 a month on our bank account. So I'd estimate another 80,000 perhaps for the year, which would put us about 80,000 over, collecting more than we budgeted. National board certification, we budgeted 9,000. We used to have 3 people that received $3,000 a piece from the state of Maine. And that's one that the money comes in and we pay it out to the person. So it's really just a wash. So we will see $3,000 in savings on the expense side for this as well. But we only had 2 this year. And then the other one that was not predicted was a check from Efficiency Maine. All of the HVAC and some of the efficiencies that have been going on in the buildings qualifies us to receive a rebate for some of that work. And so we received $78,200. I don't anticipate any more this year. That's a nice amount to come in. Those are pretty much the variances. The total variance is a deficit of 263,000. But again, as I spoke when we were talking about main care, I believe the unfilled positions and we are under budget for expenses and special education will largely cover this. So I think overall it will be a wash. That's my projection. I think that's it.
Any other questions?
Questions can I answer for you?
Yes, not.
Thank you, Denise.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you very much. All right, number 5, from numbers to knowledge, the student experience presentation.
Okay, this has been a long time coming. We had this scheduled quite some time ago. We've invited our administrators to come up and just talk a little bit as we move into budget season, talk a little bit about all the supports that we have in the school, how we look at our students, how we offer supports, what supports we offer, so that once we start the budget process and we start going through some of those pieces, there's a clearer understanding of what that all means. So there's a lot. I'm going to preface this by saying there is a lot of information, like a lot of information. We will share the slides with you after the fact on the in the minutes. We'll share the slides. And so we've got 2 parts of the presentation, K-7, and then the high school will also speak about what they've been doing as well. And just kind of going through these slides, it's very impressive. And as I said, there's a lot of information in them. So we know that there will be questions. And even if you think of questions after the fact, we'll certainly do our very best to, address those questions. We have our administrators coming in, in the next couple of weeks for budget discussions, and we can work through some of that at that time as well. So we are going to begin with our elementary. Our principals and some of our elementary teachers are here to talk through some of this. We also have Kristen Hobbs, who's here from the middle school, and Principal Archambault and Assistant Principal Luders are also here. So we'll begin with this portion of the process. And I think
We did set some chairs
Yes,
over here,
over
you guys,
here.
if you want to come on over and.
We have to
I'm gonna block it.
from here, so.
We also
If I,
Yeah, no, so I don't, I can,
you, Nancy, am I right in your way?
Select.
Wherever you want to go,
Yes, is that?
whatever makes sense.
Let's see around here. Oh, this is, you know what? Thank you for checking.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
Can we just bring that up? Just the whole wire.
I get down there. Bring the wire.
Oh.
Take the whole board to get me.
All right. And Peg, if you can't see,
She has it.
I think we shared the document with you ahead, so hopefully that will help. And does Nancy have a version?
She's sitting down. So,
Yeah.
Just let me know.
Oh, she's on the ground.
Oh, thank you very much.
Do I need to do anything to this or do it same thing?
It sounds like it's working.
It's doing its own thing. Yeah, you're good.
All right, so, do you want to put that on the slideshow? Oh, yeah. So we sat down as an elementary team and really tried to pull all of the things that we do all of the time that just really kind of feels like breathing at this point, and put it into one place. And it's a lot. And to try to put that in some sort of succinct manner to present to someone was difficult. We've done our best. Just to try to give you a snapshot of all of the things we do, and then at the end, what that looks like for going through. These are just definitions that you will see in the slideshow, because we're a good acronym. So here is all of the things that we gather all of the time, K5. NWEA, the BAS, that's where we really sit down one-on-one with a student and listen to them read and talk about their comprehension. We do a words their way spelling inventory. We look at students' high frequency words, how many of those sight words do they have solid? We give students a phonological awareness screening, the PASS. We use Eureka assessments, exit tickets. That's really part of the math program. That's every day. What did you learn from today's instruction? We do a rapid automatic naming screener. And we use that data for planning intervention groups, class placements, MTSS referrals, progress monitoring, and dismissals. And also that information helps the administrators plan professional development roadmaps. In general, spring is a very busy time with data. Looking at all of the data that we've gathered through the year, holding data meetings to review that, to create flex groupings for the next year, and to identify intervention needs for the next year. Holding meetings with rising grade levels to prepare for the fall and assign class placements. And we'll get into more specifics about how we do that. Again, we use that to create roadmaps.
Somebody got excited.
That was weird.
What's control? And then we hold meetings continuously throughout the year. In the fall and winter, we have weekly meetings with teams to discuss weekly data and do their common planning. There are weekly PLC meetings. There are data meetings with teaching teams and interventionists to review data, create flex groupings, and identify intervention needs. Our MTSS meetings are happening. Our flex and Title I services are fluid, so that's a constant looking at students and deciding where they should be.
There's daily tracking through Eureka assessments, unit assessments, exit tickets, screeners, coach consultants meet with teams and make targeted plans for students, running records, reading with students. That's a lot. Monthly, hold MTSS meetings. And at that time, we would look at all the data points for a student, including attendance, Swiss, academic data, classroom assessments. Those meetings might include admin, interventionists, teachers. And at that point, you might even determine that there's more data that needs to be collected. And we plan interventions for specific skill gaps. We also have PBIS meetings where they're looking at school-wide Swiss data. And that might help a team determine what is the next piece for the PBIS team. So we might look at Swiss data and say, oh, the cafeteria is spicy. What do we need to do in the cafeteria to make it a better place for all? Just a sample of those roadmaps that we create. This is a sample of a literacy data wall. Every school has a data wall for every grade. On those data walls, you'll see all of those things that we talked about. Their NWEA scores, their words their way would be on this. Their, what else do we have there? On the early literacy is the past.
We have high frequency words for the lower levels, letter sound. Yes. So every single student is listed out on the data walls that all teachers have access to.
This is a sample of a math data wall with their NWEA scores and information from their modules from Eureka.
And you can see both data walls are color coded so that we can easily look and see where the students are.
So as Michelle was saying, we look at all the data all the time. We use those data walls to find out what it's telling us. Like, what is the story the data is telling us? That way we can determine the focus. We sort the kiddos by priority needs. What is the focus of each group? And we assign staffing based on the needs in that group and how much support or what we need to focus on for those groups. Agenda in our data meetings, which we have fall, winter, and spring. Again, is like what's going well, what are the trends, what shifts do we need to make, student shifts, like ideally they're always growing, so what shifts do we need to make, or what focus do we have to do, things to consider, instructional focus, like every time you meet, like, oh, where is, looking at all the different data, what's the area that showed up for that group that you need to focus on, and just procedures. We have resources that we follow. What new resource? What do we have? What do we switch to make sure we're meeting the needs that we notice on the data walls? We use all this information from spring to fall. One of the things we do at the end of the year is we have 2 meetings and we start talking about classrooms for the fall. We look at that data. We talk about classroom teacher specialists will be in there with us, special education counselors, administrators. Anyone involved with students participate. Teachers will have a general knowledge of where students are in math and reading academically, what focus they need to focus on before they leave the meeting, so they're prepared to start the year. And we make sure that grade levels speak to each other about where, what they might have been working on, what focus to move forward. So there's a lot of communication as they head the spring, so that we're ready to go in the fall.
And as Tina talked a little bit about what that meeting looks like, it really, those spring data meetings really help us hit the ground running on day 1. Instruction starts, we know exactly where the students are from that first day. And there are opportunities for teachers to assess the students as needed. And obviously you'll have some move-ins that you'll need to do those assessments with. And if a student comes back and they're feeling like, I need to just do a quick check-in because something doesn't feel like a accurate placement, we do those as well.
We continue those fall data days for the literacy placements, for meeting with our interventionists, special education, or Excel. It's all a part of that, and all part of those conversations so that we are meeting the needs of this. Part of that spring data is thinking ahead to where they're going to be assigned, especially for the literacy flex groups, who's going to be running which different group, and looking at who's going to be helping to support those groups. So we have that all ready, so we can just start right in the fall. So no ground is lost. So we want to kind of talk about what it would look like for a student. So we give an example of student A. In the spring of grade 1, the second grade team attended grade 1 data meetings to review the data points for their rising students. And at that meeting, student A would be placed into a priority group. We call them P1, P2, however many sections we need. So that's their priority group for their fall flex block. This determines the instructional focus for the priority group based on the meeting with the teacher. So we have an example up there of the data wall. You'll see there's some spring data on there, so you can see the spring to fall of all reading levels, high frequency words, the NWEA, it's all there. Based on that data, student A gets placed into the priority 2 group throughout their flex groupings. So that's where they were in grade 1, and then you can kind of see what their data ended up being there. So looking at that, the team discussed the students' academic needs and decided to refer the students because maybe the student wasn't making the growth that we would expect to see to academic interventions for the fall. So starting in grade 2, that student might need academic interventions, which would be meeting with an academic interventionist 3 times a week for 30 minutes in a small group to focus on a specific skill. Looking at this one, it would be a specific math skill. The interventionist would be tracking the data during each session and would present the updated data after a 6 to 8 week cycle. And then the teacher would continue to monitor the student's progress as well throughout all the assessments. And at this point, I'm going to actually turn it over to one of our interventionists, Carolyn Fry. Exit out of this.
Right.
What's your presentation?
I'm an interventionist at the Hanson School. So this is just a little.
There you go.
Yeah. But
There we go.
So this first slide is really about how do we really come down to who's going to get intervention. And what we generally look at as the data wall that was just recently up there is first we look at the NEWA scores. And if a child has placed what we call in the 20, if their score is at the 20 percentile or lower, those are our struggling students. Usually that's designated by the red color. And then also we look at their benchmark assessment data. So if they're reading 2 or more levels below the expectation. For example, we're right deep in the middle of data right now, but if you have a second grader, they should be typically reading at an independent L right now. So we would, if there's a student reading at like a J or lower, those would be our students that we would be taking for intervention. And also we definitely reach out to teachers because sometimes you get a student, for example, who's got a higher, their NWE score, A score may be a little bit higher, but their reading level is lower. So we try to look at that discrepancy. And really it's the same for math. The only different for math students, the only difference is they do look at the end of module, the assessments from the Eureka Square program. So they add that, they factor that in as well. So what does intervention look like? Well, generally students at the tier 3 level are pulled out of class to a quieter room, the Title I room. And generally the groupings are the size of like 2, 3, or 4 children. We try to keep them pretty small. Every once in a great while, we may have a one-on-one situation, but it does not happen very often. An intervention lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. And we really try our best to see students 3 to 5 days a week.
and it's really helpful if they're consecutive days. So we're looking for like continuity and consistency for these kiddos. And we try to group our students in intervention by need. And then we choose a program that is based on what their need is. Where are they struggling? Just some of I just included a few of the programs for reading. We use UFly, Flyleaf, LLI, Geodes, and the rewards program is more for the 4th and 5th graders. And then I think pretty much we're all using numeracy consultants for math across the district. And there may be some other ones as well. So what would a typical intervention include? Well, a reading intervention could have one of the, often most of these things. Some things may happen on one day and not the other day. We usually do some kind of eye tracking movements for midline, balance, and reflexes. Do a lot with high frequency words. A lot of us use we group high frequency words based on their similar phonetic base. And we have lists that we work with, and that's mostly K, 1st and 2nd grade. Although there have been students in 3rd grade still working with high frequency words. Usually we have a great guided reading lesson. We're building background knowledge, working on comprehension. Sometimes we're writing about reading, and obviously working on reading fluency. Usually there's some phonics work or spelling, and that's based on some of the assessments with Words Their Way. One of the great things that NEWA provides for us is these big vocabulary lists, depending on what the where their RIT score is. It's like a range. These vocabulary lists are super important and very helpful. I know I use them in intervention, and also I teach a flex group, and I use that every day as to drive some of our instruction. And usually we have some phonemic awareness book. Math intervention, the numeracy consultants program is broken. We always give a placement test right when we pick a student up. It's just counting, number ID, adding and subtracting, part to whole, and place value. Those are like the 5 subcategories. And the students really love this program. It's broken down into like a digital mini lesson that you do with the students, and then usually a hands-on leveled activity. Oftentimes it's a math game. And then usually they have a written practice page to go along with it. And this program really targets and strengthens crucial foundational skills. How does data drive our instruction? Well, as you can see, there is a ton of data. Some of the things, just the reading, NEWA has a lot of different reports. But I just wanted to point out 2 important reports. You can get a class profile. This is a huge time saver, because what they do is they organize your students according to need for you. That can kind of a time consuming thing to have to do manually, but since they do it for us, we all use it. And then we also get there's 3 subcategories: craft and structure, key ideas and detail, and vocabulary acquisition and use. So a student on a reading NEWA would get a score for each of those areas. They take the average of it, but you get it broken down for you, and that's a very helpful report. And as for the BAD, the benchmark assessment system, I feel that this is one of the best indicators of a student's reading progress. They're always given individually, and they are so informative. We can observe things like reading accuracy, which tells us what areas do student, maybe a student needs more work in certain phonics area, or they don't have enough high frequency words, or maybe they need help with compound words. It could be a number of things. Those, the BAS really gives us a lot of that information. We get information about reading fluency, and also reading comprehension. I mean, there's more data here. I don't want to talk too long. And then, what did I? Oh, and just a little about progress monitoring in intervention. So typically intervention, we do one each trimester, like we have a group of students, first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester. Roughly, it's about 12 weeks. Every once in a while, if there's an MTSS meeting on a student mid-trimester, we may pick somebody up if that's the recommendation the team wants to go by. But we are continually progress monitoring throughout that 12 weeks so that we're really honing in on, okay, this student is really getting this, but they still need more work in this. And a lot of these programs we've chosen to use have these built-in mini assessments, like 3 lessons, and then you get a little assessment. So, 2 more important points. During intervention, we try really hard to use a program that's different from what students are getting during their flex group. And if it's not working for students, we have other options that we can do. We of course try to stay into the program so we can see, gee, is this working for a few weeks? But if something's not working, we're willing to try something new. And as always, we try to have frequent check-ins with the teacher. What are they observing of the student in the classroom? Now that they're having some interventions, maybe they have some other suggestions, or, maybe what we're doing is working well. Thank you.
So before we get into the middle school piece, we're kind of, this is very timely because we're all knee deep in the middle of our mid-year data meetings. Lebanon, we just had an all-day one today. So Carolyn and I were in with a couple of the teams today talking about students, and they get they're very specific. I mean, we really look at each student individually in order so we can meet their needs. And then I turn it over to the middle school now to talk about that transition.
I'm Kristen Hobbs. I'm the intervention coordinator at the middle school. Middle school is an incredible place in our district because all the kids are coming together. They are leaving their nest of being in mostly the same classroom throughout the day, and they are now coming to a team of teachers, multiple teams of teachers because they're going out to global classes. So they do have that in elementary school. It is like a time of incredible change for our kids. So it's really exciting. I feel like the middle school, we see and learn a lot about kids that they might not see in elementary school because there is just so much flying at them and they're changing so much during that time. So the transition to the middle school is a really big deal for the kids. Like I said, things are really changing. The elementary schools, those data walls that they give us are amazing. So we continue the data walls at the middle school, but we use those data walls to help us make placements or make choices for the kids in the middle school as well. Our counselors work really, really hard with the different elementary schools that are sending kids to meet with them before they're sending students over so they can get background on students and what the students need the most. They work incredibly hard every spring. It's like boot camp for them to figure out the teams. They want to make up the best teams that they can, that are equitable, that have kids of all different abilities, all different things that are going on with them. So they work their butts off doing that. It's like a shell game and they're moving things around everywhere. They work really, really hard on that. So they place them, and we also look at that data for academic interventions as well. And the guidance counselors are amazing about communicating information with the teachers too. So one of the cool things that we do at the middle school, and we do it at the high school too, which we'll hear a little bit about, is the BAR program, Building Assets, Reducing Risks. And I'm the BAR coordinator. I have been for 10 years, since 2015. We were probably one of the first, if not, it was the first or the second middle school in the country to adapt the BAR model. So it is a strengths-based model, and we we talk all the time. Each team meets weekly. On the first week, they meet in the small group with just their core teachers. They talk about students, they level the students based on their level of concern for students. So a level 0 kid is somebody that they feel is doing really well. A level 1 is somebody that they might have something that they want to share with the team, or like a little brief intervention. A level 2 is somebody who has something a little bit more concerning. They might be failing one or more classes. They might be struggling with mental health at the time. They might have something going on at home. Maybe they're homeless, things like that. And then the level 3 students are students that we have worked with over the course of weeks and talked about interventions for them. And they go to something called Community Connect. And that is a group that meets weekly and talks about those students. I'll talk about that in a second. So in that small block, they're leveling students, they're talking about kids. And then the next week, I come in, an administrator, a guidance counselor, special educators. We have behavior support specialists, we have student support specialists, all sorts of people come in and we meet together with the team. We go through the level of kids, we talk about our level 2s, we talk about our level 1s, our level 0s too. It's strengths-based, so we talk about what do we know about them? Oh, they love horseback riding. How can we leverage that in getting them interested in school? And we come up with plans for students. So if a student is struggling, we will come up with a plan and write that all. It's a giant spreadsheet, write it in our spreadsheet, and then we come back to it at our next meeting. The students that are referred to Community Connect, we talk about them on Fridays. Usually it's about a 2-hour meeting. Those are students that are really, really struggling. They're failing probably 3-4 classes. They might have a lot going on at home. Maybe somebody that needs resources because they're homeless, maybe somebody that has some mental health concerns, maybe they're some self-harm or things like that. So they're kids that we're trying to connect to bigger resources, getting them counseling, getting them supports, perhaps getting them a mentor or something like that. So we come up with all sorts of things, behavior plans, and that group is amazing. Actually, the bar, 2 years in a row, the bar staff have come in from Minnesota and observed it, and they're like, your Community Connect is incredible. We have such a great group of people on there that is just coming up with ideas for kids all the time. So we really talk about the whole student, and global teachers give us input. All sorts of teachers from the school give us input on this. And it's really cool as well to be at a meeting and hear how a student may be in social studies versus how they might be in ELA versus how they might be for a male teacher versus a female teacher, or just different styles. And it's really interesting to hear that piece of a student. The teams also meet and talk about students and plan things for their students all the time. We do all the assessments that they do, not all of them that they do at the elementary school, thank God, but we do the new ones. We do the Words Their Way a couple times a year for the entire school. Students that we're concerned about, we will do either the PASS test, the core, which is a reading assessment, lots of different assessments depending on our concerns for that student. And then so this year we changed our model from, our model was that if a student had intervention, it would actually be for a semester because we were doing it as one of their global classes. And that obviously brought some negatives along with it because students couldn't take a class that like health class or like art class that they might really love and would be great for them. So we have changed to like a push in pull out model this year, and we're learning and figuring things out around that. And we're doing monitor meetings with the teams to look at the data wall, also to hear from the teams who they have concerns about and why they have concerns about them. And so we're exiting and entering students based on that. This year has been kind of a growing year that way. Personnel has changed a little bit. Things have changed around, but I think next year we're going to be in a good place with that.
One other thing to add. So part of our RTI programming is our Squire Time. So Squire Time is a intervention block or an extension block in our day. It's 4 days a week. And any teacher that recognizes that a student is struggling, needs extra support, needs some beefing up on some skills, they will book that student and they will come in and get small group instruction, reteaching, maybe retaking an assessment to just remeasure what they know, what they can do. And so part of just this monitor meeting strategy, this comes from the elementary model. So it's really, the idea is that we're moving similar to that. And so we, just based on our scheduling, the 6-week monitor meeting is what we can do to make it responsive and also smoother in our schedule. So what happens is that the intervention teachers compile their data based on the interventions they're providing students, and then meet with each team to talk about the students that they're providing interventions to and any growth. And then the team, based on a bunch of different screeners, but Panorama pulls a bunch of data from Infinite Campus and other areas, and we can see trajectories and trends for students and their learning based on teacher inputted classroom data. And so we take that data, that informs the meeting on who's on watch, who we're worried about, and then the team collectively says, I know they scored this way, but that's not what I'm seeing in my class, so maybe hold off for the next round. Or, hey, this is a kid that we're all really concerned, even if they do score this way, this is a kid who's we're actually concerned about. Can you fit him onto your intervention list? And so the interventionist, she's Dan Morin right now, she finds a time in her schedule, she communicates with the teacher, and she typically it's maybe like a 20 to 30 minute pullout for small groups of students working on very specific skills, depending on what we know through our data collection, what their weak strategies or skills they need to be working.
I should say something about Panorama. So we use Panorama, which is an online program, which it like melds with different campus. And it's really cool. It's a very cool visual way of looking at students. And this is often how teachers can look at their homeroom or their team, and they can level kids or they can book kids based on what they see there. So it pulls in their academic grades. And so if you have an NM, it will make you red. If you have some C's, it will make you yellow. If you're doing pretty well, you'll be green. So you can see that academically. We can see attendance in there too. It does the same thing for attendance. And then it does the same thing for, we can put surveys in there and checking in on social, emotional well-being on students. And so we can look at that piece too for them. And then when you drill down and look at each student, it will show their test results. It will show any sort of behavior reports that they've had, incident reports. It shows in detail their attendance, like how many classes they've missed and which ones. So it's really cool. It gives us a lot of information. It's a really interesting dashboard for us.
Is that it for us? I think that's it.
Okay, so now we're going to move. Thank you. Yeah, are there any initial questions for K7?
I do. All right. So the first thing I want to note, which is such a positive and awesome thing about K through 7 that I've experienced with my kids, the flex groups for reading are like so beneficial to these kids. They come home and they know like what level they're at. It's very much like giving public library back in the early 90s where you're going through your like, reading blocks and you're achieving, and like they get very excited to go to the next level. And I was just notified that they're now beginning that with math as well, with flex groups for math. At least with my child's kindergarten class, which she's doing. So I think that we historically seem to do really well on NEWAs in reading. And so I'm looking forward to see what that reflection of the math flex groups has for this coming year. One question I did have, every year we go to our kids' annual physical and she drills down on us about screen time and about it being 2 hours or less. She's very particular about that number. And you guys know more about this than I do, but when it comes to those behavioral issues that we see, I know screen time can really contribute to that. So do we have a maximum amount of screen time the kids get on their learning apps throughout the day? And is that something that we could start sharing with parents? So maybe like if they are keeping their kid around that 2 hours a day, they're incorporating what they're doing at school.
So I'll talk a little bit about that. Oh, we have to go here. We don't have a set time. We really we try to minimize screen time, especially knowing the screen time that happens outside of school. And I think the teachers are all really mindful about the purpose of the use of their devices. For example, when they're doing some of the writing assignments, like that has a very different feel of screen time versus just being on there playing a game. So it's very purposeful in what they're using the screens for.
Okay. And that is something that I totally don't know about. I don't know about like intention, like of the quality of the screen time and that's effect on behavior. Did you have something else?
Yeah, I was just going to say the middle school certainly most likely has more screen time than the elementary school, depending on which teacher and which subject area and what they're learning specifically during that time in their subject area. We are working towards an ask to open type policy where students are not just randomly on their computers, but it's intentional when they are on their computers. It's something that we are working towards, but certainly very aware of screen time and the impact on the psyche of anybody.
Right. Okay. And then one other thing, when me and Audra were at the MSMA summit this year, it was literally 100% based around student engagement. And the metric that pretty much engagement is formulaic. So there is a formula for engagement. It doesn't just mean you're a fun teacher. It's about more than that. So I know you guys have the data on everything related to our children, and I fully believe in that. But do we have any type of specific data on the engagement of teachers? So like a yearly survey about how teachers are engaging, or which ones are like the most engaging teachers, something along those lines.
I think I don't have a data wall of that to share with you. But certainly that comes up in the Marshall rubrics. So in our teacher evaluation, which means that those are things that we are looking for when we're going into a classroom. So it would be very typical of any observation to include data, specifically, and we do looking at our watch, at this minute, this many kids were engaged in the lesson, as well as you can observe that. But then also, one of the things that we've been doing is working on these classroom practices, K-5, and really thinking about things like a 5-to-1 positive to correction ratio. So literally going in and taking data and then reflecting that back to teachers. Hey, this was great. This is what I saw. We've also done the same with opportunities to respond, which really speaks to your question about engagement. So we took on talking to teachers about increasing their opportunities to respond, and then did a whole round of observations around how many opportunities to respond were students given in a 10-minute block. And you would be amazed to know how many can be given at a small reading group. I kind of thought that would be a place where there might be less, and it blew my mind.
Oh,
So
awesome.
So yes, we do that.
Any other questions? Okay, so now we have the high school coming up.
Good evening. I am AJ Ufort, principal here at the high school, along with
Allison Perney, I'm one of the vice principals here at the high school and also the director of studies here. And Audra has invited us here, thank you, to share with you really much like we've already heard. How do we know how our students are doing? And when we have that information, what do we do about it? You'll hear some commonalities with what I've already heard, but clearly the high school is different in many ways. And so you'll hear different data points and different processes that are used in our building that may not be reflected elsewhere in the district.
I'm just going to jump in quick. So the other piece, and I know this was mentioned sort of right from the beginning, there's a lot here. We are going to go pretty quickly, and just sort of for context, our principal's office secretary this morning, kind of like, hey, we were talking about the board meeting. And when she knew Ms. Kearney and I were going to be speaking with you, she's like, you guys need to keep it under a couple of hours. Like, you could stand there all night. We're not going to do that, but it's going to be hard.
It is going to be hard. So we will not first, we promise. So really quickly, we're going to really talk about 4 areas tonight. So just a brief overview of some of the big things that make us Noble High School. So we are Noble. The second area are the types of data that we use when working with students. The third area is when we have those data, what are the processes that we use to take a look at them? And then lastly, what do we do about it? So the actions. So these 4 facets here are Noble High School core values and beliefs, our vision of a graduate, and our personalized learning model drive a lot of these downstream processes that we'll be talking about. Additionally, because it's also timely, we have an upcoming accreditation process. We're going to be seeing a group of them here in the fall.
October.
And so a lot of those standards were also held to in terms of looking at student data. So our core values and beliefs, I'm not going to read this, but we truly use this to drive the majority of what we do here. And we use that core values and beliefs to also drive the development of our vision of a graduate. This was formerly called our 21st century learning expectations. We recently revised this. The way that you can think of this is that for students to leave Noble High School, to be a graduate, to receive a diploma, these are the big areas that we feel are important for them to have demonstrated proficiency in it. I'm not going to go through all of them, but for example, effective communication for both speaking and writing would be one. The ability to collaborate, the ability to critically think, those types of things. So students will practice those skills in various content areas. The other piece about Noble High School that makes it relatively unique is that we use what we call a personalized learning model here. In most simple form, you can think of this as sort of the opposite of a one-size-fits-all way of instructing students. We take it a bit further to define it in 4 areas. So our personalized learning model focuses on our school design. So this idea, for those of you that have been on our school tours, that we have pods where students are arranged on teams, teachers have common planning time, and a school within a school model. We have academic and social emotional support. So we'll talk a little bit about those at the end. Those are those actions. What do we do when we have the data, know where students are? We have a proficiency-based system of teaching and learning here. And we also have what we refer to as multiple learning pathways that can happen both within the classroom. It might be you have a differentiated pathway to get to your assessment, but it also can be on a larger scale, meaning of a multiple flexible pathway for graduation. Very briefly, because it sort of fits with what we do already. If you were a school that didn't do this already and you were to undergo accreditation, they would point that out to you. These standards around using data effectively, collecting it, analyzing it, and doing something about it, that is required to remain a school in good standing for accreditation. And again, I'm not going to read this to you, but if you would like to at any point delve into those standards, feel free to let me know. So transitioning to what types of data do we collect? There are many. We will go through some.
Yeah, and that's not a comprehensive list as you're looking. Those are the ones we're going to sort of speak to tonight. But it gives you a starting point for all of the different types of information and what it can look like and how it's looked at.
So one of the first areas that we take a look at on a
daily level, at the grade book level, are really how our students are doing in terms of the proficiency in our graduation standards and or vision of a graduate expectations. So from a student-facing side or a parent-facing side or a teacher-facing side, Infinite Campus, we divide students' grades by standard here. It also produces an overall grade of the course, but this particular student, you can understand how they were doing in writing compared to speaking and listening in their English class. So we're able to really disaggregate that level of information about a student simply by using the paper. In order to pass the course for our students here, they can't just have a passing overall grade, they have to have a passing grade in each of the standards associated with that course. This really helps us understand students' areas of strength and weakness within a particular course. Much like you already heard as well, we use Panorama here. So this is an example where Panorama is showing you, if you look at the student in the green box at the top, that they have an A in their English course, but it also shows you how they performed on the NWEA for fall and spring assessment administrations. What's helpful about this, like these guys explained, is if you see something that's not lining up the way that you should, we can really delve into what is going on with that student. If you're performing well in your English class, but not on the assessment, what does that mean? Why is that? And vice versa. Similarly, we're able to track school-wide progress in meeting our graduation standards. So we use documents that are managed by our subject area coordinators to take a look at what are the most commonly failed graduation standards in a particular subject. What are the ones that students are successful at? And then we adjust accordingly. Again, using Panorama, we have an idea of our school-wide overall achievement in both ELA and math. And the courses that we run compared to the assessment on the NWEA. That really helps us understand our correlative effect. We don't want to see that our kids are getting all A's in their English class and then tanking on the actual assessments, or vice versa. We also use a system of school-wide rubrics. All have a common metric for measuring our vision of a graduate expectations. Our vision of a graduate expectations, like I mentioned before, they also align to graduation standards. So kids, again, can't pass their classes unless they pass their graduation standards, which means they can't pass these, they can't pass the course without passing these either. We use the data from those rubrics to again get an idea of how our students are doing with one team to another, one teacher to another, to help make sure that we have a comparable experience for kids across similar grade levels, similar courses, and similar assignments. We also use common assessment data. So a particular assessment here is for biology. It assesses 3 graduation standards simultaneously. Both of our biology teachers will give this assessment, and then they can take a look at how students are doing in one group compared to another. If I'm a biology teacher who has given this assessment, my students don't do well, but my grade level partner students do well, then that's something that we need to investigate.
Perfect. So looking at some other pieces, and folks before had talked about the NWEA piece, and I think to get started, what's really important is, and they spoke to it, NWEA gives a tremendous amount of information. And so there are a number of rabbit holes you can go down looking for. So one of the things that we work really closely with teachers on is putting protocols and procedures together to help them access the data. Because I think one thing that is very common is you talk about that there's 100 different pieces, now try and go find it. It becomes really demotivating for a teacher to take hours and hours and hours for what am I looking at? Where can I find it? Can I find it the next administration like I found it? And as soon as that starts to happen, all of the structures and pieces crumble and you're not able to continue building a solid foundation and looking at a student. So we have these processes in place to help make sure that what teachers are doing to guide students and guide this work. So that's really important.
So what you're looking at there is actually a protocol that they use to help them remember how to access their data And to build that muscle memory around, I should be looking at this, pulling this up, using this routinely, and here's the way that you do that. So we wrote this to pair with using the NWA platform, just to really guide them through that process.
And so what we'll do now is click through a few slides, and this is from a sophomore literature and writing course. So at its most simple level, a classroom teacher can pull what are the levels of each of their students. So how many of their students are at greater than 80% level, 60 to 80, 40 to 60, 21 to 40, and below 20. So this allows a teacher really quickly, in a glance, to say, where are the students in my class? How did they perform on this particular assessment? And we'll sort of dive deeper here as we go. So one of the pieces here then sort of is able to pull out. So there are skills that are associated with each of these score bands. So a teacher, again, really quickly can see, great, a student is at a certain particular level, but what skill does that mean that they likely have success in? And what are the proximal skills that they're going to need a little support in? So very quickly, a teacher in a classroom maybe wants to start their and use some of these skills that there was a weakness in and build on helping students improve and become better at these areas. So looking at the next one too, what you'll see is you can break down. So you had the overall classroom data. Now you've broken it down by the 3 skills in particular that are being measured. So you have informational text, literary text, and vocabulary. So it's not just about this one score, it's breaking that one score down and being able to look at what are the relative strengths and weaknesses of this particular class. Again, being able to guide instruction based on where are my students at, what are they really good at, what do we need to get them better at? You know, what do they need more exposure with in order to be successful? Again, similar to a slide a couple before, you can see that the classroom can then be broken up into each of these areas. Informational text, literary text, and vocabulary can be broken up and assigned a score. So now you're really digging deep into, you know, this is getting at a lot of like the flex grouping that you saw at the elementary level where, hey, I'm going to extend and put these students together because I'm going to assign them a particular question that's going to help push them and move forward. This group of students, I'm going to put these students together for a particular activity, and I really want to do some vocabulary skill building with them. And you can quickly get that information at the teacher level, put together a lesson that's going to help to move students relative to their strengths and weaknesses and help them to move forward. This piece here would be an individual student. So you're looking at the graph down below of where this particular student is at. So I think why this is really helpful is we're dealing with people, and these people have good days and bad days. And, you know, as we all know, an assessment is a point in time. And so it's just a moment in time that we're getting, where were they at on that particular day? There's no guarantee that that's where they would have been at the day before or the day after. So it's really helpful to be able to see how is their longitudinal success or struggle to be able to make decisions and move forward with that student.
And the other thing I'll say here is that this is typically what students work with directly. So students see this about their own scores. They'll see this particular graphic, they'll be able to see how they're doing. And one of the areas in particular age group that becomes a confounding variable in a lot of these data is the motivational aspect. And so for a student to be able to see their scores, and so at least talk through, okay, next time I take this, where should I be? Can be motivating even for somebody who may not be particularly inclined to try their best on an assessment. So kids work with these in both their English and their math classes before they take these assessments.
Yeah. And this would be, a student might look at this data when they are looking at goal setting. So they're sitting with their teacher looking at, okay, this is a fall. Where do you want to be at in the spring? Where can we reasonably hope? Let's look at where you were fall to spring last year. Let's look at a lot of these factors and then work to build. Because I think students will often respond, you know, I mean, the student culture, if we can gamify a little bit their score and it becomes that sort of mindset of trying to get a high score, that helps to incentivize. a chart that's really helpful for teachers to be able to see, because obviously it is really important. We want our students to be high achieving, but we also want our students to be continually growing. So sometimes it can be easy to just see like, oh, my students are doing pretty well, their scores are pretty high. But what's really helpful is to be able to see, are they also growing at the rate that we want them growing at? So this quadrant breaks down into high growth, high achievement would be the top right. That would be where we would hope all of our students would be. Not only are they achieving at a high level, but they're continuing to grow at a high level. And then, versus students who might be achieving, but that growth is stagnant. Something we need to continue working with them. We need to push them. It's not okay just to have a score that's in the blue. We want to be able to keep them moving, keep them growing, and focused on what do those students need to continue to move forward. Talked a little bit about growth goals, but this really speaks to, so NWEA does a pretty good job of setting some goals, target goals for students, but there's also customizable pieces where you can set a goal that's above and beyond. So I think really working with the student and setting that, where do we want to be? Where can we get you to? How can we help you to move the needle and to keep improving? So again, other pieces of data that we use. So we use SAT data, of course. That is something that, all of us in this room are probably pretty aware of. And it's just, we want to continue making sure that on all of these metrics, our students are achieving. And so it's the SAT data is less so probably at the classroom level at times, but that is a way for us as a school, a temperature check as to the fidelity of how our processes are working. Are our students keeping pace? And we're able to compare them against other subgroups of students.
So we typically, for comparison there, it can be difficult to compare students to subgroups, but we generally use how the students in the state of Maine and the United States perform. And obviously our goal is to not be below either of those. The other thing is some longitudinal data here that we collect. And again, there are some confounding variables of, it used to be a state requirement to take it, and that has since changed. But when we make changes here, we make sure that we stay within a trend that we would expect on some of these scores. And if something deviate significantly, that could cause pause for us.
Similarly, our graduation rate. So this gives you about 15 years worth of data. And again, we want to always be checking ourselves. And we want to be making sure that decisions we're making, things that we are doing are in the best interest of students, obviously. And just helping to check and make sure our numbers staying in the direction we want them to stay. If we start seeing a dropping graduation rate, which has been, again, year by year, it fluctuates a little bit, but by and large, it has been very steadily increasing over time. So when we put a intervention in place, when we have something, we have an opportunity for students, we want to make sure that we're getting the desired effect out of that intervention. Is it working? Is it helping students to be successful? So that this is a metric that allows us to check us against ourselves and make sure we're continuing to move forward.
And we're not going to talk about the data too much, but that's a separate presentation. But again, to compare, we increased the difficulty of earning a high school diploma here in 2015 significantly. And we were really worried that that was just going to make it very difficult for students to sort of meet those expectations. That was something we were very worried about. We were glad to be raising the expectations, but again, couldn't get students there. So at the same time, we developed a system of supports that didn't exist before. And what we saw was that students were able to still achieve graduation at a rate that we had before and trend slightly even upwards, despite the fact that we made it much more difficult for them to earn the diploma.
Another area to check, and again, it's good. So you look at something like NWEA, and you're really looking at where an individual student is at. What are their strengths? What are their struggles? How can we help to move them forward? But it's also helpful to be able to compare ourselves at a much more greater level. So AP scores is something that we look at. And AP scores can be compared. So they are, we get the local scores, obviously, of our students. We get the state level scores, and then we get the global level scores. So how are students doing throughout the entire world on this particular AP test? And again, that's an area we're looking at. We are a school that allows all students, if they choose to take the challenge, to take an AP course. So we don't put barriers up saying, no, you can't because. So again, we hold ourselves to, we still want to be able to achieve at a level equal to or greater these other categories. And so again, as you later go back and read some of the statements at the beginning of the presentation, we hold very true that all students should have the opportunity to be successful, and we can help all students get to that level. And so we certainly believe that and we live that. But we still want students to be able to compete and be successful on these scores. And I think by and large, as you flip through, we won't go item by item, but you will see that our students compare very well to those other two subgroups, both at the state level and at the global level. We do have science, we have social studies, where there are 4 AP offerings. We have our English, and we have our math, our AP calculus.
And these are just last year's scores. It's not similar trend the year before.
Yep, our scores are generally, so obviously with AP, sometimes you're dealing with relatively small groups of students compared to the entire school population. So another piece, and we didn't include as part of this presentation, but we're always looking at 5-year data. So how do our 5-year cohorts of students do? Because again, sometimes and it can be artificially high or low. You may have a small group of students, a group of 6 or 7, or of a group of that 12, 3 students were really stretching themselves to do a course. And so it's important to look that out over 5 years and not either panic or over celebrate because a relatively small cohort of students achieved at a certain level. Another piece is early college. So something we've seen a huge increase in is early college. And again, students have the opportunity to take the courses. The state of Maine allows students to take 12 credits per year. There is upcoming going to be a cap on the number of lifetime credits that students can take in the state of Maine. But as of right now, they can take 4 courses per year. But again, are students being successful? Have we prepared them to go and take a college class as a high school junior or senior and be successful in doing that? So one of the pieces we look a lot at is, what are our students' passing rate? So it's great that students are taking on this challenge, but are our students being successful at this challenge? And by and large, they are. I mean, each semester, our students greatly outpace the, even if you look at a community college level of the passing success rate, we are beating that. And it's a barometer for us, and this is a really good test. We want our students to be able to be successful at the next level. And so when we see that over the course of semesters, outside of one semester, our students are successful in college courses at greater than 90% of the time, that's good. That shows sort of those downstream metrics that things are working. We want our students to be successful when they leave us. This is an indicator, are they on the right track to be successful? So this is something we look a lot at. Now, again, the next piece of this is how many students are choosing to take on this challenge. So as you can see over the last 5 years, so this graph shows summer term, fall, and then spring. Our numbers have increased greatly for students that are taking courses. So, one of the things I'm proud of, we work really hard to help our students value their education. We're having 50 courses taken, again, plus or minus a couple each and every summer. So there were a lot of things that students do, maybe some of us in this room, whether it was working or playing sports, there weren't a ton that were probably taking on that challenge of doing it during summer break. So just really proud of students, looking at avenues, obviously the financial impact of being able to take a college English class for free that will then transfer, that that doesn't hurt. They're certainly willing to do that. But then you see that, this past fall, just for example, we had students taking 126 college courses and passing them, if we went back, but it was 90-something%. So we're not talking about, 10 classes and students pass 9 and good job. And the highest, the valedictorian took 3 and these are all the highest of high students. We have a lot of students taking college courses and taking on that challenge, and they're doing really well with them. And that's something we're really proud of.
And I will say that the scary part of this is waiting to see how they do. So all of these structures and processes that we talk about knowing where students are, sitting down with the data, having collaborative conversations, making plans. We're a little in the dark, by design with the community college system, because we don't really get to know. They're really a member of that system. And so we know if they drop the course, and then we know if they fail it at the end. So all of these systems that we have built and used for other students to sort of make sure they're okay, we can't apply it here. And so I think that, to sort of AJ's point, we're really proud to see the results come in the way that they are, because they're doing it very much on their own.
Right, they are. Yeah, I mean, it really is the level of us calling them in and meeting with them. Okay, you have your book, you went to your first weeks of classes, you turned in your first assignment, you know how this works, because we don't get to see any of it. So in theory, they could never have purchased the book and never access the course. It doesn't happen, but it certainly could.
It happens a little bit.
Very little.
That didn't reach 100.
Another opportunity that's been continuing to grow here is extended learning opportunities. So this involves students taking part in work study opportunities and apprenticeship opportunities. And the one thing, so first off, we'll look at the numbers, and you can see that the numbers of opportunities are going through the roof. But I think that it's important to note, and again, I'm going to go back 100 years ago when I was in high school, there was such a thing called co-op. And students who really didn't like school and struggled with school left part of the day and went and worked, and we have some students who are really focused on work, and but I think it's important to know, so of this 104 students that are participating right now in an ELO program, 50 of them are taking part in a UMaine Orono course on future planning that happens right here at Noble High School. So there's another component. Yes, they're doing the work piece. Yes, they're doing the extended opportunities. They may be part of an apprenticeship or an internship, but there's also an academic portion that goes along with that. So it's not, great, AJ, good job. You're sending 104 students out of your building early and they're going to work. That's not what this is. So these are really meaningful opportunities where students are gaining experience. And I think one of the pieces that is great, but I'll be honest, a little bit scary, is the workforce needs in our area are such where there are students. The reality of the situation is there are students who turn 18 years old and are contemplating, does it make sense for me to continue in high school, or should I go and do the high set so that I can start at Pratt & Whitney 6 months earlier, or I can get myself on the list for the shipyard 6 months earlier because I turn 18 in December and I don't graduate until June. So these pieces are really important to help them connect. We've developed a really strong relationship. For example, one example with the shipyard of we are able to be a part of their pre-apprenticeship program. So students are able to complete, if that's an area of interest for them, they're able to complete all of the background check, all of the pre-work, so they can actually start in July. So it used to be that when July came, you had to start that process of being able to get into your program and get into your apprenticeship. We've been able to back that up so students can they'll start working with our students in December of their senior year so that when they graduate, they're ready to go. And that's a really big sell for us because students are able to have that opportunity. Analysis.
We promise we are done. So with all of these data, what are the processes that we use to go through them? And luckily, you've already heard about the majority of these. So we also use BART program here, grades 8 and 9 only, and then we use RTI process dovetailed in a similar way, grades 10 through 12. But we also have our teachers use a procedure called data-driven dialogue, when they're in team meeting or when they're using their collaborative work time on Wednesday mornings to take a look at various data sets. So much like with the middle school mentioned, we were one of the first high schools in the country to be a bar school. We were proudly recognized recently from some of our work in that area. And it's these structures and processes that drive intentionality around looking at the data and doing something about it. There's nothing magic about it, except again, it sets the structure, sets the intention to look at those data with students. We have again modified our RTI process to be comparable to what the bar students are receiving. And again, that works at grades 10 through 12. We take a look at student data in team meetings and then set interventions. Here's an example of a spreadsheet that a team may look at. So the student names have obviously been redacted. They would be along sort of that area where you can see sort of the black boxes. You can see the leveling system on the far left-hand side. You can see the course grades, the ones in red, the ones they're not doing so hot with. And then you can see as a team starts to decide, okay, what do we do about that? Is sort of what's recorded there. At the bottom, you can see that we do that week to week when we meet. And similarly, a data-driven dialogue process, we use this framework to look at a variety of data, whether it's SAT scores by town, by gender, whether it is taking a look at how did your semester one grades come out. So when grades post at the end of the semester, we have teachers sit in departments and take a look at, how students did, and did they do as you'd expect, and if they didn't, then what?
We're almost there. So here are a list of areas that we offer for students. And again, I think it's important that we think about, yes, we have interventions, we have opportunities for students who are struggling, but you're also going to see on here avenues and opportunities for students who are excelling and need a further push forward. So we really try and work hard. It comes back to that personalized learning piece of really wanting every student to move forward. So how they come to us, we're going to move them forward. And I think this is, I guess a little bit of bragging, and this is now about 8 to 10 years old, but I think the little quote here that just talks about that really the work that Noble High School does and has done, as Ali mentioned, this work, is many, many, many years old, and really the graduation changes back in 2015. A lot of these pieces around differentiation took hold, and it's always nice to receive positive feedback on the work that you're doing. And I think for us, it's really important to see that work continues and is still happening today. So, we're tweaking the system, we're working on our system, we're always trying to do things better, we're always trying to fine tune, but it's nice to see that things are working.
Thank you.
And we could go on, we did.
You went on. Thank you.
And more, in fairness.
Does anybody have questions?
Yes.
Any questions?
I had a quick one. One of your interventions is nighttime. What is nighttime?
Yes. So nighttime, mascot, not sleepy. Yeah, it's the Squire time, similar to Squire time.
Okay.
That is an intervention time in our day when students are able to get targeted help and support.
Okay.
Or extension and challenge.
The teachers are able to both the students have some choice about getting into the teacher, but the teachers have some choice as well about, hey, I need to speak to the student and help them, either because I know they can go further or I got to get them over this particular hurdle.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Work in that. Yes, a lot of work. K-12.
Yes.
So thank you all for
Thank you,
being
yes.
presenting, and yeah, we really appreciate it. And I'm really hopeful that for the board, that this helps give some context. So when we move into the budget discussions starting next week, we have that different understanding of some of our academic and our structures that we have in place. So thank you for that. Before we move on to the next section, we do have a little follow-up, and this is the middle school. We had a board member ask to just have an update on how things are going with some of the positions that were put back in the budget at the end of the budget process last year. So Principal Archambault is going to just give us a highlight on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So last year, about a year ago, I was asked to kind of create a 3-year plan on how we were going to move forward and shift some of the things that we were getting feedback about in the middle school. And so we created 2 goals, and the first goal is the one that I'm going to focus on tonight. And so that goal was to cultivate a positive and inclusive school climate by enhancing multi-tiered proactive systems and programs that effectively manage and address challenging behaviors while incorporating family and community engagement. So I heard many times from board members that there was a concern around bullying and then supporting students who had been bullied, student disruptions, being sent back to class. And I was challenged by the school board to flip the script and reduce situations where teachers can't teach. And so I'd like to highlight some of the changes that the Noble Middle team has incorporated this year. And it was through like a ton of collaboration and possibility from the middle school team. So this year, we consolidated our core teaching team from 16 to 5 teams, which includes a 6-7 combination team. We added recess, which we call wellness at Noble Middle School. Our schedule used to be a waterfall schedule, which I'm not going to try to explain to you because I can't, but essentially every day had a different order of classes, or the same order, but it just shuffled down. And this year we have a more concrete schedule with travel groups of students, so the same 23 students or whatever go class to class. We have celebrated our Pride Value assemblies every 6 weeks and recognizing students who are meeting the standards. And we model how to show positivity, respect, integrity, dedication, and empathy to the entire student body. We shifted from split grade lunches followed by a 25-minute homeroom time to 30-minute whole grade lunches and a 30-minute whole grade wellness for both 6th and 7th grade. We modified our response to intervention model for academics. We added the building assets reducing risk small block meetings to the schedule, which doubled the time spent by teachers spent promoting student success. We created a duty schedule that increased common planning time by the department, by every department by 30 minutes at least one time per week. And we shifted our summer school philosophy. So from a punitive model where you did not perform at school to a model that established positive and healthy connections to school, which we call the Noble Middle School Summer Experience. We have mapped out in our working towards, we've had our first meeting, but our family partnership meetings to strengthen the community school connection. We built a roadmap this year that contained only 2 goals that were around positive school culture and curriculum consistency and student growth. And our emphasis on student initiatives and school pride. For instance, if you've been to any Noble Middle School home athletics, you've noticed the student section has been super exciting. So here are some key data points through January compared to the same period last year. We've seen a 17.5% reduction in behavior referrals. Our suspensions have been reduced by 32%. Our chronic absenteeism has been reduced by 37%. Our referrals that were specifically for classroom disruption have been reduced by 63%. Our referrals for staff disrespect have been reduced by 53%. Our referrals for alcohol, tobacco, vapor-related issues have been reduced by 53%. We surveyed every student at Noble Middle School to measure the efficacy that we found, or that for wellness, for the recess time. And we found that 6th grade, there was much, the measurement was greater, like we had more positivity. However, there was no negative effects of wellness. There was a 21% increase in 6th grade students reporting feeling more happy from the beginning of wellness to the end of wellness. 90% increase in 6th grade students reporting feeling relaxed after wellness compared to before wellness. 47% of 6th grade students reported feeling better after wellness. There was a 40% increase in 7th graders reporting feeling better after wellness as well. And so there were some other data points, and it was really the change was not significant, but none of them went down from a positive to a negative response. So these statistics are representative of the incredible effort, the skill, and the professionals of the entire Noble Middle School staff. And I want to highlight and introduce our two MTSS, which is multi-tiered system supports behavior interventionists, Amber O'Neill and Cindy Westney. And these are the two of the positions that you funded during last year's budget cycle. And without them, our giant strides forward would not be possible.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amber O'Neill, and I am the student support interventionist here at Noble Middle School. So as Noble Middle School student support specialist and Cindy's over there as our behavior interventionist, our role is to ensure that the students receive the tailored support that they need in order to succeed. So while we're committed to supporting all of our students, our primary focus is on identifying those students who need more structured long-term assistance and addressing their individual needs in order to help them thrive. For us, students generally fall into about two different categories: those who require ongoing long-term support and those who need targeted assistance in order just to get back on track. Our goal is to take proactive approach by intervening early, teaching essential skills, modeling positive behaviors, and creating personalized plans in order to help the students succeed both in the classroom and beyond that. As a school committed to the philosophy of MTSS, Cindy and I have been focused on implementing and strengthening the support of our students. So Tier 2 interventions are interventions that are specialized in designed for students who need additional support that can still benefit from the targeted individualized strategies. So these interventions focus on developing skills in areas such as social learning, behavioral regulation, and academic achievement. We collaborate closely with the teaching team and continually monitor the students' progress to ensure that the support is effective. So some examples of that for you are to do social skills training. So we help support students by improving their peer relationships and managing their emotions in social settings. We do regular check-ins with them, providing ongoing support to increase accountability and to help students reflect on their behavior. We focus on emotional regulation, teaching students to cope, use different coping techniques, such as deep breathing and cognitive reframing, in order to help manage stress and anxiety, especially when they're in the classroom. We also focus on restorative practices and conflict resolution. So we assist students in understanding the impact of their actions, repairing relationships, and also promoting empathy for them as well. So we also do behavior intervention, so developing personalized plans, and we also provide academic support for emotional barriers, so addressing the impact of emotions and behavioral challenges on academic performance through alternative workspaces and stress management strategies. However, when students face a more significant academic, behavioral, or emotional challenges, we provide more Tier 3 interventions. So these are highly individualized and involve close collaboration with specialists to ensure that each student receives the most effective and targeted support for them. And some examples of those would be individualized academic and emotional support. So offering one-on-one support to address emotional barriers and increase the student engagement. Behavioral intervention plans. So again, developing more personalized plans for these students with severe behavioral challenges and focusing on triggers and strategies for improvement in their academic performance. We do trauma-informed care, so providing sensitive supporting care to help students process their trauma while being able to engage in their academic requirements. We do crisis intervention, so responding to immediate safety concerns, connecting students with the appropriate resources, and offering ongoing support to them. And we also have family and community collaboration, so working with the families and the community agencies to provide comprehensive support and plans that address both in-school and out-of-school needs for each student. And so through our targeted interventions, we ensure that every student receives the tailored support that they need academically, socially, and emotionally. By collaborating with teachers, families, and community partners, we are working hard to create an environment where all students can thrive at Noble Middle School. And then I'm going to pass it over to Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy Westney, and I am the behavior interventionist at Noble Middle School. And I'm going to talk more about how we are supporting teachers at the same time that we are supporting students. So in addition to what Amber addressed, we are addressing the behavior, social, and academic needs of students, but we're also prioritizing the well-being of our teachers and staff. Some of the initiatives we've implemented include, when we first started, Amber and I, at the beginning, we met with all teacher teams to discuss and identify student behavior needs, and how to best support the teachers. We felt it was really important to really talk with teachers and communicate with them about what they were seeing, what they needed, what they would need in their classrooms to be able to be more effective teachers. So from that, we developed and presented a clear, easy to follow behavior flow chart that helps teachers and staff identify student behavioral needs and understand the appropriate steps to access support. So it was a very visual flow chart in terms of what's the behavior, what's the intervention, and how to contact us. The flow chart was initially implemented in just one of the 5 teacher teams because we wanted it to be successful, and it was. And then we slowly added more teams and the globals because we wanted them to be supported as well. So we currently support all 5 teams and globals. We've gathered valuable data through weekly bar meetings, which we've heard about, where we discuss students with academic, social, and behavioral concerns. This data has been very instrumental in identifying patterns and helping us make informed decisions about where and how to allocate resources and support. Our attendance at weekly Community Connect meetings, which you've heard about, with administration has also helped us gather data and discuss planning for students identified as Tier 3. We connect daily with teachers for check-ins to actively assess their needs for the day, and it's always different, and identify students requiring additional support. We've developed not only individual, but also class-wide behavior strategies because we really wanted to widen the net of the students that we're reaching in order to help students achieve successful outcomes. We recently rolled out what we call the Pay It Forward initiative to build a positive, supportive school climate for both teachers and students. So each week we select 2 teachers that we really give extra attention to and extra support. So it could be little things like favorite snacks. What do you need to sort of reset during the day? Just things that would help them sort of be more regulated during the day. And then they pay it forward to a student of their choice who they feel needs more support or a stronger connection with. And it's been really fun, and the teachers have been very appreciative of the extra support. They have said things like, I really feel seen, I'm supported, thank you so much. And as we know, a lot of teachers are not used to receiving things, so some of them have had a hard time just saying, oh, not me, but it's been really great. And we also work collaboratively with the school counselors and school-based social worker to address daily and longer-term needs of students and teachers. And most recently, teachers are in the beginning stages of learning how to implement restorative practices in their classrooms. Restorative practice focus on building community, fostering mutual respect, and addressing harm or conflict through dialogue rather than punitive measures. The approach emphasizes accountability, empathy, and repair of relationships when issues arise. So we're excited about this. It's a new thing. It's a long-term goal. It'll take a while, but we're in the very beginning stages. We have also made substantial efforts to increase family engagement, particularly in terms of communicating about student behavior and progress. We keep families informed of both challenges and improvements, creating a stronger partnership between school and home. Most recently, one of our initiatives is inviting parents to come in and share a hobby or skill or a passion during their Squire times. And we've reached out and they're reaching back to us. We've had several come in work with our students. And it's been just a wonderful way to invite them into our school so they feel comfortable and they know what's happening in our building. So the parents are excited and the kids are also excited to have more choices for their Squire times. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That
Thank you.
was a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the hours of work that everything you put in. That took a lot of time, I think.
It did.
So we appreciate it.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. That was great.
On to employment.
Okay. And we can say at this point in time, like administrators, we know everybody has been up very long. So please do not feel like you need to stay. We understand, we get it. So this is always that option to move on. So thank you. We appreciate everything you've done. Okay, so we have a few employment updates for you. We have a resignation from Amanda Foote. She's a special education teacher at the Hanson School, and she has accepted another position. So we need a motion and a second on that.
Motion.
I make a motion to.
Second. Okay, all those in
Thank you.
favor?
Thank you. We have Desiree Labby, who is first grade at Hanson School. She took a leave of absence this year and has submitted her resignation effective for the fall. So we need that motion and second as well.
Motion,
I make a motion.
second. Okay, all those in favor?
Who was our second? I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
And our last employment update for this evening is a retirement, and it's Chuck Bragdon. He's Noble High School, one of our history teachers here. He's been teaching for 28 years. And so we do need a motion and a second for that.
I make a motion to accept his retirement with thanks.
I'll second, with the same sentiment.
Okay, all those in favor? Good day.
Thank you. That's that. So just for the superintendent's update, we'll move right into that because we've had a lot coming in at us this evening. So we have just a couple of dates and I'm going to just read them, but then tomorrow what I'll have Jen do is just send out them on the calendar if that helps. So as we enter March, typically March and April are the months that we know that we could be here every Thursday talking about the budget. So next week is going to be the initial draft budget presented to the board, but also we're having Harriman come in. Harriman and Associates will come in and talk about the facility study that they did, the overview that they have for us on that.
That's during the regular meeting.
That will be during the regular meeting. So we'll do those two pieces. Thank you for the flexibility for March 8th for the budget workshop with our administrative team and the directors to come in. So that's next Saturday. And then we have, again, March 20th, so all Thursdays, we will be sending out agendas for the budget. So we'll also, on the regular meeting days, we'll also include regular business. So that's that. We do have March 20th identified as a policy committee meeting. So we'll send that out as well. And then I believe the 6th is code of conduct.
It's supposed to be, yep.
Code of conduct. So we'll get that out as well. Okay.
March 2nd.
Yeah. Thank you.
That?
That is that for that.
Okay, backpack
Okay,
donation.
this is very exciting. We have a donation of $10,000, an anonymous donation for our backpack program. And that is awesome.
It's awesome.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. You need a motion to accept it?
We do.
So moved with thanks.
Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor? Whoever you are, you there?
Thank you.
Amazing.
Somebody knows, so because we have a letter to send, but
Yes.
they
Oh,
wanted it
okay.
to be anonymous. Yeah.
All right.
It's very appreciated. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very much.
very. Okay. Okay, other.
Yep, I'll just start with one other, and then we can go from there. So just wanted to kind of circle back and clarify a process that we discussed earlier this year. And that was when we offered tours to go visit schools. And then we also talked about that if you were going to want to visit a school, which was absolutely okay, but that we wanted to have that communication go through the central office, just as protocol. And so I just wanted to revisit that. We talked about that on October 3rd. We've had some of our board members do that. We've had some board members email and say, I'd like to go into a school, that type of thing. And they work through that with the administrators and the board. And so I just wanted to open that up because it has come up and just wanted to spend some time again discussing it and just making sure that we are all on the same page.
So just, can you provide the rationale why we need to implement a protocol that's beyond state statute and our own school board policy?
Our school board policy does say that it is up to the building principals and the superintendent to come up with processes for that. So in talking, number one, we want to streamline the process. We also want to make sure that it is a time that is okay for the schools and that they have time to be prepared for that. And also we want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with that. Sometimes having, honestly, board members or others come in, we just want to make sure what the intention is, and we want to make sure that we're clearly communicating that to everybody. So that's that.
It just seems like an extra layer to make it more difficult for board members. I mean, do we require any other community member to notify the district office of visitations? If a parent wants to come in to visit, is the district office notified?
We get notification.
From
also have our administrators get notified and they can say yes or no.
Why doesn't that happen now? Why doesn't the administrator communicate the district office? I mean, as a superintendent, there's tons of protocols that you implement with your administrative team. If they are contacted by a board member for a visit, why don't they notify the district office? Why does
we're streamlining that process. This is what we have talked about as part of that process.
I think just to clarify too, as terms of parents in buildings, that absolutely is typically taken care of administrator to the parent because their children are in the building. When we have visitors that come in from other areas, it does flow through us first. And then we just set it up with the team, and they're usually totally, we just set it up and it's fine. And actually, Nancy, you and I talked about it. This is within the past month or so where we were talking, you said to me, I'd kind of like to go into the schools. I'm like, absolutely. Just let me know and we can set it up. And there was another piece of that, but we can talk about that separately. But it's just for us, it's just about setting it up in a smooth fashion and being able to just let people know. That's all. It's not, I don't think it's the expectation is that people will see you tomorrow, and that's fine. But there is a process. It's a protocol. It's not a policy. But it does sort of follow through with what the visiting.
I think the confusion was, if you don't mind me interrupting. Oh, sorry. Is that how you use it?
You gotta hold on for a second. Yeah.
It's on.
I think the confusion was that, I remember the meeting when you suggested that you would set up the visits with us and you could even come and help us. And, but I didn't remember it ever being voted in as a board protocol. I thought it was just a suggestion that you had made to offer to help us get in, the newbies way back in October. We did not vote on a protocol, and I would have thought if it had been a protocol, the board of directors protocol, we would have had some kind of voting to make it a protocol. I don't know. That's just what I thought.
I thought we voted on it years ago because if I recall, we had a time when board members were just showing up at schools and it was
causing a lot of anxiety for teachers.
I know. I think because it is in our school board policies that it's a best practice, not that it was officially voted in. I mean, putting myself in the position of an administrator at one of the schools, I would say like having people come and go as they please just doesn't make me feel like the security of my school is great. So I feel like anyone coming to visit, we should be setting that up through the proper channels. That just makes sense to me. So in my experience, since I've joined the school board, I've visited 3 different schools for different reasons. I set them all up through Audra and Sue. They responded literally within, I think, a couple hours saying, absolutely, reach out to the appropriate principals. And it was lined up within that day. So I would say, like, if it was like a cumbersome process, I would be more inclined to agree. But having gone through the process with them the way they had asked, everything was dealt with within like a couple hours. And I went in to each school with the confidence that I wasn't interrupting the flow of the day they had already planned. So, which I guess is the goal.
And I didn't interpret it as a gatekeeper situation. I interpreted it as like making the most, like maximizing everyone's time of like involved, the school administrators or whoever's doing the tour, whichever of us is going to visit somewhere. I did not think of it as like a gatekeeper situation by any means. But I guess to that note, if we are all aware of something in this room, if we have questions about it, best practice should be to ask instead of just go against it, I would feel. I don't know. I don't know the situation or what happened, but that's just from what I'm getting from this.
No one was going against best practice. We didn't know we had a protocol we were supposed to be following. So we followed the policy that is listed in the manual. We requested a visit. I know that we were offered the assistance. I did not know it was protocol, nor do I know why it would be protocol if we board didn't vote on it. And if it was a protocol that was put in place 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, it probably should have been implemented as part of the policy. I don't know, but it was a long day today trying to sort all of that out based on, I don't the teacher, I don't call on you. Raise your hand, sorry.
No, I just think it's like great that we're all going into the schools, which I think is like the ultimate takeaway from this. I think it's like, that's the point of what we're doing here. So I think that this is a good conversation to have. And now, it's great that we're all being involved and heading into the schools.
Yep. Agreed.
So I'm just uberly sensitive to giving up the authority that's given by the state. State statute says we are supposed to talk to school staff and employees on a regular basis, both in the schools and in the community. That's what state statute says. I believe it's number 21 of Title 20A, right? So I'm like uber sensitive to that. So I'm all for, like, if I contact the principal, say, hey, I'd love to be able to visit your school. And I try to give some notice. It's not like I'm coming in 5 minutes. I do think that that's rude. I've been in that seat. That's rude, right? But to say, hey, I'd like to visit, tomorrow, this timeline, I'm not needing an escort or anything like that. Just love to come in and visit, and make myself available for listening, right? I have no problem at all with the protocol being the administrator contacts the superintendent or the administrator says, you know what, that day really is a bad day for us because of X, Y, Z. If you're hoping to see this, you're not because it's a different day. Great. I am amenable to that. What I am not amenable to is adding a step for board members. I'm just not. I'm not amenable to that. This policy says we're supposed to contact the building principal. And the principal has practices and protocols that are approved by the superintendent. I believe I'm pretty close to quoting exactly what that is. And so that's exactly what we did. And what we heard back from administration was, yeah, I don't think we can set that up. You have to contact the district office. That's not what board policy says. And that's not what state statute says. And I'm not willing to give up that authority. That's just me.
What's the difference? You contacted them, just contact her. It's no more work for you. She gets on the email and she goes to I don't really know why we're arguing about this.
The extra step, Nancy. The point is we should, if we follow our policies, we simply just let the administrator know we'd like to visit your school at such time. And whatever practices they need to put in place, by all means do that. That's why they're administrators. right? It's not that board members now have a different expectation. Come on, I just think that's ridiculous. We are supposed to be visiting the schools on a regular basis. We should have an open invitation to come every single day of the school year. They should expect
That's very
board members.
disruptive to the school.
That's what I expected as when I was a building principal. I expected any community member to be in that building at any time. Now, there were times when it wasn't a great fit and I simply told them this is not a great time. However, you're more than welcome to stay anyways. Like that was how it worked. I understand Noble's not exactly like the one that I lived in, but I just, the response that I got, and I do not blame the administrators in this regard, that they were somehow keeping Pennsylvania Bay, but they felt that they could not work with me as a board member. They felt that I had to go to the superintendent and then word would come from the superintendent say, we have anointed Josh Tabor to be able to visit your school. I just think that's ridiculous.
And I think you're making an assumption about how they feel.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a protocol. We were just following that protocol.
The policy.
The policy also says the superintendent and the administrator can work through what a visitation, how that process works.
But that policy does not state that school board members must contact the district office prior to setting up a meeting with a.
It says such
That's not what it says.
procedures shall be subject to the approval of the superintendent. And that was the procedure that we talked about and put into play on October 3rd.
As a suggestion, that was not voted on by the board. It was not, and if we're going to, and we should edit the policy and send it back to the policy committee and say, this is what we want to happen. And let's have that discussion.
It's, what unfortunately this does is it makes it appear like we don't want you in the buildings, and that is absolutely not true. We just want people to follow a process. And I don't think
cannot
that
put
that's.
every single thing in a school day in a policy.
It goes back to
That's why we have protocols for this stuff.
what's the rationale for the policy so that we can make sure that things go smoothly. I actually need a legitimate rationale. Like when would be a day when you wouldn't want one of the school board members in your schools?
Well, that's a day on all they would do were testing.
Why not? Why not have an administrator? I mean, not an administrator, a school board member to see what testing looks like in our elementary schools.
Because I think
There are other people who maybe not, right, Nancy? I mean, what day would you not want a school board member in one of these buildings?
I think it's important, like I've done it the superintendent way, but I do think it's important to hear what Josh is saying when it comes to, like, we want to eliminate all the barriers that school board members have to access to the school. And we want to feel integrated in the community, so comfortable that we feel like we can call up the principal and say, hey, can I come down today? I don't think we're all there yet to that point, and that's unfortunate. And currently with the policy, I'm completely ignorant. You're stating a state policy, right?
A state statute.
A state statute. And we are talking about a norm among the board, right? So we're talking about two different things here, right?
One has authority over the other, right?
Right. So one has authority over the other. So we know you are someone that is a stickler for policy, and there is a place for that on this board. So if the policy for the state is that we can reach out directly to an administrator, I have a hard time arguing with him about this. So I think we need to reconcile these two things. First of all, is that true that that's a state statute? Is it true that it supersedes our policy? And then where are we going to go from there?
Our policy does, Sue read it.
Yeah.
That section. Do you have that up again?
Yeah, hold on.
Okay.
And does that supersede state statutes?
Well, she's an administrator though. If you're going to say administrator.
But can it be any administrator? Can it be a school principal? And does the state statute supersede our norms?
We have to live by the state statute.
And we build in the state statutes as part of our policy.
But what if we vote on
So
minutes
which one
that
are we going
clearly,
with? Yeah.
but also we voted on minutes that very clearly state, board tours, email the assistant superintendent to set up building tours. She is happy to do a building or multiple buildings
A
in a
building
day.
tour is a little different though than what we're talking
There's more
about.
to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of, I think it's.
I think there was
You can just set up the visit.
Yeah.
as
Mike.
No, sorry, I can
I'm gonna point.
project. I think there was a misunderstanding and it got kind of warped into something it shouldn't have been warped into. I didn't know that we had a protocol. I thought we could go by policy, and we did. And then it became just back and forth, and it's like, wait a minute. So maybe, like you said, maybe we need to incorporate, maybe we need to revise the policy to reflect the protocol. Am I getting this right? Revise the policy that shows the protocol so that there is no misunderstanding or vagueness in what is expected going forward. I do, and we do have, and we are mandated by state to visit with these teachers. I haven't done it yet, but it is something we are supposed to do.
So I just want to say a few things.
Sure.
I offered an opportunity for the two of you to come in and speak with me about this informally prior to the board meeting, and you refused. And you basically said, tell your administrators, we will be there tomorrow. That is not a partnership. That does not feel like a partnership. That does not feel like we're being respectful to our staff and to our community of students by saying we will be there. I offered an opportunity to talk about it because I wanted to provide the discussion from October 3rd in the event that was not remembered, and you declined to meet with me. So that's the first thing I want to say about that. And Lauren, I wanted you to be able to finish reading the minutes of that, because you weren't able to do so.
She's happy to do a building or multiple buildings in a day based on schedules. If that doesn't work, please email the central office to facilitate a visit to individual schools. It is important to note that notice is necessary to set up these visits. And I will say, as far as just stopping in, like, I picked up a sick kid and I was like, oh, like the classroom was just up the stairs. I could see it. And I was like, I can see his backpack. Do you want me to run and grab it? And they're like, no, because that's actually disruptive to other classes, like to just have a parent walking around the school. So there is that side of it too, was like, we focus so much time on like setting these kids up for success. So making sure we're doing our part in continuing setting them up for success by, you know, kind of following these board decisions. We stand as a board, we make a decision kind of thing. And respecting what's going on in buildings and knowing that it's not always conducive to what's happening for us to be walking around or seeing what's happening.
And that's what happened previously. There were board members who were doing that, and it was causing teachers a lot of anxiety to have board members popping in and watching what they're doing. And sometimes at not good times when students were struggling or having emotional issues. And there's not always a great day to do that. So I do think being prepared for it and allowing them to make sure that if there are situations where you want to avoid causing stress or additional stress to a day, that's just respect. It's not limiting anybody's rights. It's just respectful.
I think this all goes back to having the general understanding that we're all on the same team. So when a school board member is at your school, there should be no anxiety, although I know it comes inherently with them being there, but we all have to work together to work on that and that culture among all of us here. So that's what I hope we can do going forward. I know that with this particular issue, it sounds like we need to just come to a more precise consensus among the board. And so that we don't have to have this issue again. And hopefully if we do have this issue again, well, we won't, but hopefully if it comes up again, we all know that we are coming to the table with the best intentions, and we're not, you know, everyone's visiting the schools so that they can see them. And sometimes it's fine to see them on their worst day too, because that's where you show how you're winning on bad days. That's part of the culture of our school as well.
And while the point is and certainly we encourage our board members to go in, it's not to solicit information, it's to have an opportunity to see what's going on. And if they are approached with some information, it is to direct the staff to the proper channels, to go through the proper channels.
Yeah.
So that's the other part of going in and as a board member in your role.
So state statute under Title 20A, number 21, communicate with school employees and the public. A school board shall regularly communicate with school employees in the school board's school administrative unit and members of the public who reside within the boundaries of the school administrative unit. That's where school visitation comes from.
The Drummond Wilson, what's the word I'm looking for? Handbook also really dives into exact scenarios of like board members being really integrated into the community in a way that I don't feel like we are. So I do want to move toward like more of that model, but so what are we going to do now?
Just like to be embraced, just if school board member contacts a principal, by all means, come in. I mean, if the whole school is on a field trip and not even going to be in the building that day, that would be the one day where we probably shouldn't go visit that school, right? But other than that, there's always things happening. And, I work during the school year and my vacations sometimes are split with my daughters and sometimes they're back in Michigan where I can enter a school. Like there are very few opportunities when I can enter a school. Love to make that happen. And I just don't want to feel what I felt. What made me feel was, no, you're not welcome unless you get permission from the superintendent. That was how it felt. And to constantly say, like, what policy are you referring to? We have a policy. I understand administrators have protocols. Yes, by all means, implement those protocols. But school board members have policy. And that's what I was following. And so it did feel like no. And when it's like, wait a minute. No, I can't be told no. I literally have a charge from the state to do exactly what I'm doing. Right. So it's just, I understand the two different interpretations. I do. I honestly do. And I hope that I've been able to successfully communicate like how being told, yeah, no, we're not really allowed to have you in here unless we hear from the district. Like that comes off wrong. That is not the message that I don't think that was the message that was intended to be sent in September, October. If I wanted a tour, if I wanted the principal to show me around for an hour, like, yeah, I totally agree. The superintendent who's evaluating the administration should know that the principal is blocking out an hour of their day on Wednesday, whatever, to show a board member around. That makes sense to me. That does, but that's not what the request was.
What my concern is that, Josh, it appears to me that you want to go in. I'm not interpreting what you're saying the same way you are. We are supposed to engage with teachers and professionals in the district, but that doesn't mean during their teaching day necessarily. I'm uncomfortable with people going in there intending to ask questions or grill teachers or administrators during their workday. And that to me sounds like what you're looking to do. And I just think that would cause an unbearable distraction for the day.
The other thing is, I'm assuming, we know what we say about assuming, but with this in the minutes, whether there was an administrator in the audience that night, I don't remember, but I would assume that you probably reached out and said, hey, we gave the board this guidance. So if they reach out to you, please refer them back to us. So I don't think it was an administrator, but I do understand that, especially after one of those visits, a board member shared something negative that they did hear happen openly against a particular individual that was up for a position. So unfortunately, like you said, like we just don't have the vibe that I think we want to have the teachers and administrators feel fully supported and that we are there to have their backs and not go behind their backs. And I really think I wholeheartedly agree. We need to do everything we can to make sure our community of our teachers and administrators and everyone in our schools know that we have their backs.
And I think
we're not there now.
Have you been to the schools yet, Josh?
I have.
You have? Okay. So I was going to say
In the past, I shouldn't say I've not been the last month or so,
Okay. So I was going to say, I mean, for people that have never been, like Nancy, like we always want to I assume that everyone that wants to visit the schools is going to observe. I don't assume they're going to interrogate the teachers. I know that that's not the case. So I think we should all move forward with that mentality. And yeah, like I was like, how do we proceed from this? Do we do a vote? Do we
want to have a policy committee or what?
I feel comfortable I feel comfortable following the state statute. And if issues arise, we deal with them as they arise.
Well, I think the state statute just says that we talk to people, not that we see them during their day. I think it's just that we're in touch and communicating with. It doesn't say when, it doesn't say how.
Well, if we look at the Drummond Wilson handbook, they talk a lot about really being fully integrated, like going to lunch and like seeing how the lunch line runs. Like it's very involved.
I'm listening, Allison, I'm listening to you and I really appreciate what you're saying, but you're saying two different things. If you're going in there to have conversations, which is what Josh is saying, I think that's inappropriate during the school day. You're saying, Allison, go in to observe, and that's great. And that I think during a school day is really all that should be going on because they've got enough going on. I think our policy, if we needs to be reviewed, but I'm all for leaving it so that the superintendent's office handles it until we get to a point where we feel like our team, our teachers feel supported by the board. We are not there right now. And I think they're very concerned about having board members come in.
So can I just, I'm just going to read the first paragraph of the policy. The Board of Directors encourages the active interest and involvement of parents and citizens in the public school. Board members would be considered to be that. In order to avoid interruption of the instructional program and to promote the safety of students and staff, building principals shall institute administrative procedures concerning visitors to the school. Such procedures shall be subject to the approval of the superintendent. It is understood that the procedures may vary from school to school due to different considerations such as age of students, building layout, etc. So we have an administrative procedure that we've shared with our administrators sat through and that we've talked about, which is have folks come to the central office visits. That's really all it is. It's nothing, it's not specific to school board members. It's actually also outside visitors. It is not parents because administratively, we feel like our principals should be handling their parents individually in their buildings. I think we're all on the same page. We're interpreting it differently. And I feel that there's a lot of personal, feelings about being sort of persecuted, and that is not accurate, but I understand where you're coming from. So the reality of it is we need to make a decision if we're going to follow a procedure that we've actually put into play as an administrative group, or which follows our policy or not. And we are at the druthers of the board when it comes to that. So I don't think we have to do a whole lot of other things. We can just talk about that. Jerry's got it.
I do. So if a principal invites you in, does it still need to go to the central office? If the principal says, come anytime, and you call the principal and try and set up an appointment, is that a different protocol?
It is
It's a different protocol.
Yeah, it is a different protocol. So, and one that we,
Because there was an invitation made.
yeah, which I think we would, I guess, just have to talk about. But I think that it's typically when principals are inviting folks in, they just we talk about it ahead of time.
Who talks about it ahead of time?
Like the administrative team. So like a principal would reach out to us and say, hey, we're going to open it up to we've got something going on. We're going to invite all the board members in. They'll let us know.
Okay, so say you run into the principal in the grocery store. Okay,
Yep.
And question comes up, just could be general.
Yep.
I don't have an example.
Yep. Okay.
And come on in. Just give me a call in the morning that you want to come that day. Okay. So I mean, that's an invitation.
Yep.
That I have already been invited.
Yep.
And the only person I need to talk to is the principal. Hey, is today a good day?
Right. And it's in my opinion, it's a different look, because it's not just deciding you want to come into the school that day. It's actually someone has invited you in. So I think we could have a bunch of scenarios, but we're not trying to do that. We're just asking for a process that
Yeah, I feel like
respects us.
if I bumped into you at the grocery store today and said like, oh, hey, North Berwick Elementary is having a 100th Day celebration today. Like, you're on vacation this week. You should come, Josh. Like, I don't think that would be going against policy. That's open to families and public.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely situational. Yeah.
This is
It's hard.
So this is interesting. You bring this up, right? Because the two administrators who are currently here have both stated at different times, please come anytime. That's what they've said. And they can stand up and refute me if that's not true, right? Every administrator that I've talked to in this district has said, hey, look, yeah, just let me know next time you want to come. Like our principals have been very open. So like, I understand the protocol, like just have them notify you, hey, Josh Tabor's going to be in here on Friday. Works for us, just letting you know. Like I have no problem with that protocol. That's your administrative team communicating If I'm visiting a principal, I want to contact that principal and just say, hey, can I visit tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon? Does that work for you? Like, I don't, why is communicating with the principal the problem?
I think where we're losing them was the decision to say, I'm coming either way, which is what it sounded like happened, right? Yeah. So.
And what I've expressed, right? Because
You have, I know.
you're not coming.
Right.
You know, without superintendent approval. It's like, what do you mean?
I understand totally that, but I would say maybe like bring it back to the board
Yeah.
and say,
This is what this is about.
right, but
That's why, honestly, that's why I didn't meet to meet 15 minutes. We should discuss this as a whole board. We should do that. And we should reference the suggestion that was made in October, right? You know, if you want to tour the building, set it up with, makes sense. Again, that made sense at that time for a tour, but that's.
but in building the goodwill.
And the last thing that I want to say is just, I'm offended at the idea that I'm coming into buildings to accost staff. I'm offended that any board member would suggest that another board member is coming in to berate staff, to interrogate any staff member for any reason. Like the mere suggestion, I just think is just hurtful and ridiculous.
I didn't say berate, but you said that you are planning to go in and have conversations. And I think during the school day, observation is fine, but going in there to have conversations that can pull them away from what they should be doing is unfair because it pressures them. This is what got us into this, because we had board members do this years ago who would get into conversations, and teachers and admin felt like because it was a board member, they had to entertain that, and it went on longer than it should have and took them away from what they were trying to accomplish with students that day. So that's what I'm saying. Observing is great, but if you are thinking that's your time to fulfill this state obligation of having conversations with them, I don't think it's appropriate during a school day.
And I just think you're making an assumption there that I'm going to be interrupting instructional time, you know, when teachers are working with students. I mean, again, my background of 13 years as administrator, I should clearly say how much I value instructional time, and that I would never, ever, ever interrupt that. You know, if a teacher during that PLEP and parenting time would like to ask questions, not really ask questions, it's really for me to listen. If they want to share some information about how proud they are, their kids are doing something, I'm all ears. Right? If they want to share something, I'm all ears. I'm there to listen. You know, I know Lauren, as a parent co-op member, I mean, I can't imagine that you being in a building the number of times you are as a parent co-op co-chair, that staff members haven't said something to you that there's just simply good information to have, that they were proud of, that they were successful of. And I don't know that every time you go in, it's seen as an interruption to instructional time. But I digress. I've said what I needed to say.
I don't go to that note. I don't go during times that I don't have permission to be there. And I get stopped. I get stopped in the lobby unless I have permission to do something, like to go to the PTO closet, and I go the path of least resistance with the visitor pass, and have all the visitor paperwork and all the things done. But can I ask a clarifying question? Because I feel like I misunderstood it. The statement, whether it was written or email or written or spoken about being there the next day or whatever it was that to a building administrator or to?
Who's Tadra?
Okay. I still don't like it, but I for a moment thought that was directly to a principal, and I was like, wow, that's incredibly inappropriate. Like, okay. Still not appropriate.
Because we got three more.
And I just want to finish this one thing too. I think however this turns out and however it is communicated to principals or administrators that board members want to visit the school, I would like that done as respectfully as possible. And not, we will be there, or I will be there at this time. I am going to do this. I am going to do that. I think it is a building where students are learning and teachers are teaching, and we need to defer to the experts in that building to make the decisions about what is being done and when it is being done. And I'm just asking for respect all the way through with that. So.
So what does the board want to do? Do we want to have another different policy?
I feel like we should take a little more time over the next week to research the information Josh was presenting from the state, research our policy a little bit more, compare them to the next week, and then make a decision on like something we all agree on.
As we'll table it till next meeting.
And I would also like to add that there's nothing in the minutes, speak of a protocol. It just talks about the tours. Truly, we did not have a protocol. We were told we had to abide by protocol through central office. It was like, what is this? I mean, it was like, are you stalling us? It was, so.
So I think that take on it is because of,
I don't know what I don't think it was just simply, we reached out and I think the email said, we'd like to come in, we'll be in the teacher's room with coffee. You know, if the teachers want to come in to feel free. We weren't asking, I think, isn't that what it was? And then to have this protocol that we did not have was very kind of like.
I would imagine it's very like jarring to hear that response.
It was
based
urgent because we truly just wanted to go in and he's free and I decided not to go to a dog show. So I'll go with you.
But it sounds like there's a lot of like inherent bias from a lot of people being shot across. So like
And I
are inherently thinking.
Invited us in to see his teacher's room, the
Data walls.
on the survey that was on the wall that we could come in and see. Well, I don't see him. I can't see that far away. Thank you. Did you not say come in and see the survey that was posted all over the teacher's room walls at one of our meetings a couple of weeks ago? Our code of conduct meeting.
He's not on trial right now, so I think we should put him on this.
I don't think.
Not put him on.
I know.
So Nancy, to your point, it says, please email the central office to facilitate a visit to individual schools. It is important to note that notice is necessary to set up these visits. That is the protocol. I just said there was not a protocol.
There's nothing in there that said we established a protocol. We've tours. School tours.
It was for visits,
Well,
school tours and visits.
it was understanding about what we were supposed to be doing. Because I did not realize that invite by Sue to get her to help us set up our meetings was protocol.
Sorry.
But that's okay.
I think we just need a week to just like just.
No, I just feel like it's,
No.
I have a fourth grader and I can't tell you about the back talking conversations we have and treating people with respect. And I just feel like misunderstanding a policy is one thing, but being kind to each other is the most important. And I still feel like these were minutes that we as a board had a majority vote to approve, and our norms say we will stand for our decisions. So I get there was confusion, but when there's confusion, that's when you ask questions, right? Not when we attack someone. So, I don't know.
Okay,
So get that maybe.
it's not,
Can I ask one question that I'm actually dying to know? Right? Did any of the principals that we communicated with earlier this morning, did they contact the district office at any time during the day?
Of course.
So you knew?
How else would we have known about this, Josh? Because
That's all.
because they knew that we had a protocol and that you had.
So my whole point is administration and district office had already communicated about the visit, but it was a matter of, no, don't respond to him, make him go through the process talking to district office. Like, you knew, come on.
Well, come on, back at you. Like, this is becoming really a tit for tat. It doesn't need to be that. We need to figure this out.
So we will provide some information next
Yep.
week. Okay, thank
for
you.
next week?
Yep.
On the agenda, all right, because we're gonna be here every week.
Yes,
We're gonna
everything.
see each other
Okay.
a lot. Yeah.
Do we have any others?
Yes, I have a few that I want to ask. I think they're relatively quick. It was asked, I've gotten several questions in the past, but they've become more pressing as of recently. So I think they're relatively quick questions. Does the district currently this year, 24-25, have any biological males playing in female sports?
We currently do not.
Do not, thank you. Does the district allow biological males to access women's bathrooms, women's locker rooms, or women's showers?
We follow the Human Rights Act.
I mean, human rights.
Yeah.
So that would be a yes.
That would be that we are following that policy.
I'm just clarifying to make sure like that I understand following that human rights law, that is a yes.
So If,
I mean, that is what the law says.
or if it were necessary, it would be a yes, yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. Does the district have any curricula at any grade level or in any school that teaches our students that there are more than two sexes/genders? And I'm not talking about the isolated situation where students are, where people are born with both genitalia.
Taking a break because I have to go to the bathroom.
And if you need to get back to me on
I'll have
that.
to get back to you.
We don't want to give you erroneous
Yeah,
information.
exactly.
I appreciate that. He'll just get back.
Josh, are you talking about trans women or biological men? Can you just delete?
Any curricula, right? Any curricula, any instruction.
You're talking about the locker rooms and the bathrooms. Are you referring to trans women or are you referring to biological men being allowed into the bathroom?
So trans would be a biological, if you're trans,
Trans women would be a,
you'd be a biological man who's presenting as a woman, correct?
yeah, it would be a trans.
That would be one of the situations where I'd be talking about, yes.
I think it's important to delineate the two.
But that'd be a biological male accessing those rooms.
It would be if they identify as a trans woman. So no,
Identify trans woman and a biological male can both be true, right?
I wouldn't want to say that to the families in our district. No. I think it's important to delineate where you're talking about trans.
And does Noble have any students who have been asked to be identified by a name other than what their parents gave them? So I guess that's the first question. If that's a yes, I just have a follow-up question.
Say
So just
that again.
like if a student comes in and says, so I don't want to be called Tasha, I want to be called Timothy. Does the district support that?
We support students that have nicknames.
Nicknames, yes, I understand. But if they change their name, if they don't want to be referred to as Tasha, they want to be referred to as Timothy, is that something that we just do? Not nickname. I mean, nicknames I get. My brother has a nickname. But he had a real name that he went by. So if that's the case, are the parents informed of that if that name change happens?
Name changes don't happen unless it's a legal document.
Thank you. So if there's a legal document, that would happen? Aside from nicknames, I mean, like Trey being called if you're.
You have to provide that information, yes.
Feel like William the Third, you could be called Trey because, the third Trey, I mean, that's a nickname, right? That makes sense. Makes sense.
So we do let the parents know if a child is changing their name?
No.
If a parent, yes, legally you cannot change a name unless you have legal documentation that that name has been changed.
But if
a student is requesting to be called a different name, we will do that as part of a nickname or whatever that situation is. Are we required to contact parents all the time a student is asked to use a nickname or a different name? That's a situational case-by-case basis.
No, the only.
I can't give
The reason I was asking, Audra, is because the state has mandated, we don't have to tell them. So I wondered if we were doing that, because last year, the legislature, they voted in that the schools were no longer required to let parents know of a change of name for a child.
And what I would say again is we look at everything on a student-by-student basis. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've just been,
We have a policy in our school that when a student is dealing with gender fluidity and the idea of gender fluidity, they have a team of trusted adults that they have immediate access to. So that involves the principal of their school. It involves social workers and therapists at the school. It involves the teachers that they are comfortable with sharing with. And it encourages, but does not require, that those trusted adults report that information to their parents. It's not a safe place at home for a lot of these kids. So no, it does not require that they out children to their parents. Just as no therapist where you're not harming anyone else would be required to disclose medical information to anyone.
Is this a policy in our school? Did you say?
Yeah. Yes.
Where is it?
What policy is that?
It's a state policy that we follow.
No.
Yeah, we follow it along with 70% of the other high schools in Maine.
So it's the main human rights law? Is that what you're referring to?
I could pull it up right now, but I don't have service. But it involves having a team of trusted adults, and we are not required.
If you could find that and send that to
I will.
the board, Ally, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you. I wanted to do this rapid fire. Thank you.
Any other?
So I have one. In light of the current dispute between the U.S. Department of Education and the Mills Administration, I move that we send the policy ACAA and ACAA R1 and 2 back to the policy committee to edit, that it would put us back in compliance with federal law so that we put our district at the best possible position to continue receiving federal funds to support our students.
And can you say which policies those are again?
The last one is, just
Last week or last month.
we were actually, I think that's on the docket.
That's on
for
the
March
docket.
20th.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Policy
And-
committee.
And we'll
Okay.
get guidance from Drummond Woodsum on that.
We will.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you, though.
I have to leave because I've got to go grab dinner before they close here, but
Thank you.
And I have one more. How is the district planning to respond should the U.S. Department of Education not allocate the $2.7 million currently being used by the district? The state's looking at losing $250 million by not following federal statute.
So we do not have any updates on that. And if that comes to pass, then we'll have to deal with that. That would be the plan, right? We'd have to know exactly how much we aren't getting and what,
How's that impact us
Yeah.
when we're in a
How we're not in
Yeah.
compliance.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay, thank you.
While we're running down other, I have a couple of questions myself. Questions? Going back to the reading, we all know that the 2024 NAEP came out and Maine has slipped a little bit more in their reading and their math. And I'm questioning, have we thought that perhaps part of the reason that we're declining is because we're using an outdated reading program? And that we need to, during this budget season, really think about bringing, I know you've said we need to wait for cycles, but we don't have time to keep waiting for a cycle to pass. We need to address this reading issue.
You're going to see in the budget through it, there will be some resources, updated resources for literacy.
But are we going to look at a new reading curriculum? In Massachusetts, there are 2 families suing the school. There are 2 schools being sued for the use of the Fontes Pinnell reading program.
We are not using Fontes and Pinnell reading. That is not the only tool that we use.
I know,
Literacy.
but it's one of the main ones that we use. And the lawsuit alleges that defendants falsely marketed the literacy products as research-backed, data-based, and failed to warn consumers. They do not address phonics. They have a very limited phonemic awareness part, which is K through 3. It's the most important part of the, you know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And I really think we need to start talking with Dr. Swiger. I'm asking the board to make this a priority. Our reading it's not, we are not doing, we compare to the state is 40th in the nation. We are not doing well. And I'm questioning whether or not part of that could be an outdated reading program that Ed
Reports.
Ed Reports has said does not meet evidence-based standards. I practically plead with us to address this issue for our students.
I think we're addressing the issue. We will show you data. As the principals mentioned today, we're right in the middle of collecting the data and having data days. So we will share that data with you and it becomes available. When all the schools are done with that, we will go through that with you.
Okay.
Any others?
North Berwick Elementary had their much time honored tradition, so you can probably speak more to this, but of 100th day where each class collects donations for 100 items to go to the backpack program, the food pantry, and the One Love. I'm sure it's big One Love pantry, and they collected over. Oh, Mr. Jonas, you actually the one who said it. Items.
One more time?
3,676.
That's amazing.
So we donated And then also the like fire station helps out with that. And I think a couple other outside organizations, but it's really cool. Everyone comes in and to see, and they set it all up in the gym. And so it's just a really cool experience. If you're ever around during, it got postponed. It was it should have been a couple weeks ago, but the snow.
Yeah.
A couple things got postponed on some Thursdays.
Thank you. It's great.
Anybody else? Okay, public input.
Holly Dupuy Berwick. I was gonna come up here to quickly talk about the middle school. However, real quick before that, I just want to say, I actually, as a parent, truly appreciate the checks and balances and policies that you have in place for a board member to go into a school and for ask questions, what have you. I used to work in 2 major hospitals. I was a supervisor for a radiology department. We've had Jacob come into our hospitals, which is the Joint Commission for Health Organizations, and they didn't call me. I was busy maintaining and supervising and managing this entire department. They called the administration of the hospital to organize that visit. And it felt like we were all prepared for it. We're still doing our daily tasks, but we knew they were coming. We could mentally prepare for it. We could get our patient schedule ready. And it didn't feel sneaky, and it didn't feel like they didn't trust us. It just felt like they were coming in to do their job. So as a parent, thank you very much for protecting the students, the administration, the staff, and allowing them to not have a disruptive day, and feeling like you trust the educators to do what they are paid to do and hired to do. On a happy note, I would like to say that I was a parent volunteer for the Noble Middle School's Fire Time program that Amber and Cindy are coordinating as part of that new program. I've been in there several times doing that, and when I went in, my daughter, my youngest, is 7th grade. This is her 2nd year at that middle school. And when I was going in this year to do the volunteering for Squire Time, I have to say, I felt like there was a really happy, positive vibe in the hallways. The students were like vibing. And I was like, is this just me or is this real? And hearing Mr. A's statistics, I'm wildly impressed as a parent in such a very short period of time that he's having those kinds of results with what he's doing at that school. And again, I just want to say thank you for your hard work, Sluters, the entire staff, for turning that middle school around as you are. And yeah, just really happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your perspective.
Hello, I'm Allison Billy from Berwick. I find myself in the unique position in 2025 America of not knowing if I am allowed to say what I'm going to say without penalty from our federal government. So as an elected official, I have chosen to address you all from behind the podium as a Berwick citizen tonight, though I'm sure my statements will no doubt be echoed in the hearts of some of my fellow board members. I want to speak directly to the families of our LGBTQ+ students and specifically trans students. I understand while watching the news, you may be frightened right now. You may feel your very existence is being vilified and your experience dismissed. Please understand that this school district is better every single day that you are in it. This world is a better place for you being in it. I will stand by you and your families with as much love, empathy, and understanding as I stand by my own children. And it is my great honor to stand by you and your families in this dark hour. Please don't let this darkness dim your beautiful lights. This world may not always understand you, but you are entitled to every privilege and right that is given to you and your other classmates. Thank you for continuing to teach empathy through your existence. Continue being brave. There's a quote by Emerson that to be yourself in a world that is constantly telling you to be something else is the highest achievement. So when we're talking about achievements on this board, I hope that we remain mindful of that.
Thank you. Any other public input? Okay, well, we are going into
I make a motion to go into.
executive session. You guys are excused.
I second.
Second it. All those in favor?
5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Sure.
Forgot about that.
I knew it was gonna be.
Three of us.
5
Three of them.
Is that what I just said?
That is.
Okay.